No, no, I do not need to.
Uh-oh.
I do not need to restart my computer, but some people may need to restart their brains after they hear our movie of tonight. It is another Perfect 10 episode. Everyone, thank you for venturing down the stairs, pulling up a chair, and grabbing your favorite drink to talk spoilers in the spoiler room. Hey-oh. And yeah, excuse me. Tonight, look at that. Already down the wrong pipe. We're starting off real good here. Hold on. uh, oh, wow. Sorry. Yes, tonight. Oh, see, he's got an opinion too. We're talking a film like we all are with our special Perfect 10 episode. We were talking about a film that is celebrating its 10th anniversary along with us. And I believe, I forget, I think it was Ian spun the wheel. You spun the wheel last month. I don't know. It seems so long ago. I was up during the world's largest trivia contest, and I played about 48 of the 54 hours. So brain is still trying to get out of that trivia mode. But in any case, last month they spun the wheel, and it was Stoker. So today we are talking Stoker 2013. With an interesting cast, with an even more interesting premise. And I have some wonderful, interesting, talented folks with me tonight to talk about it. First off, she's back with us from the horror retrospective. It is Kara. Hello, Kara. How are you?
Doing good. Glad to be back.
Glad to have you. You were there visiting us with Dogville, and now we're visiting Stoker. So glad to have you here to get another perspective besides just Ian's and mine. So especially, I'll be very curious on what you thought of this coming of age film. And speaking of coming of age, I think Ian is here. I don't know that.
Well, I am developmentally arrested, so I take your point.
Yes. How you doing, Ian?
Doing pretty good. Although I gotta call bullshit right out of the gate, Mark. This is supposed to be the 4D month. Nicole Kidman in 4D. This is an hour and 40-minute movie, and she was in it for what, maybe 12 minutes?
Yeah, I know.
What are you doing to me, Mark?
I'm
After the blockbuster performances of the first
I know.
few episodes, I was like, oh.
Well,
although she Judi Denched it up, man. She made the most of her screen time.
Yeah, well, now that you've seen it and seen the theme, you see why I kind of had trouble coming up with a theme month for this too, where we would have people raising eyebrows. So but tonight, yes, it is Stoker. And Kara, how would you like to try to give the synopsis of Stoker since you're fresh off from watching it?
It's definitely a very unique film, especially if I remember correctly. This is the debut film from Chan Park-wook, so you would definitely go in expecting something out of the ordinary, but I get the sense that they're not the usual dysfunctional family. There's something a lot more out of the unusual that's going on. It's kind of weird to explain it, but it's you've got this dark family secret that no one really talks about. It's kind of like that one uncle that is so secret nobody knows he exists because no one talks about him.
Yeah, and we've got a death in the family, and he moves in with the widow, and there's a daughter involved, and yeah, things take an interesting turn. It's definitely an unusual film. You're right. I remember when this came out, the big deal of it was Park Chan-wook's first Western film, because he was known for the Lady Vengeance and the Old Boy trilogy, across the Pacific, and people knew his works there. But I believe you're right that this was his first Western film, like with the actors in the studio and everything, and and it doesn't have a bit of martial arts fighting in it at all.
Well, it has very good character development. I think even just the wardrobe plays into it extremely well, of just how unusual they are in modern day society, even though it exemplifies that they're educated, they're obviously, what would you say, they're well off, but um and maybe it's just me, but it kind of touches on Alfred Hitchcock to a degree. Like, at least I kind of picked up a reference there, with Shadow of a Doubt.
Oh yeah, there's a lot of references here. One thing you've got to give Park Chan-wook credit for his style. He's got his own identity, and he doesn't seem to waste a frame much, I will say, with this, or at least a scene. He definitely and the film's it's not that long. This film's only 99 minutes. You would think a film like this nowadays would be like over 2 hours, but no, it's lean in its runtime considering what it is. But I want to first get your first initial impressions with it. So we'll start with Ian. Ian, what is your initial feeling with Stoker?
Okay, I'll say I felt like Park Chan-wook was a Hitchcock obsessive, but he had only ever seen the movies of Tim Burton, and this is the result. I did not like this movie. I found it morally reprehensible. But the weird thing is, like, I wanted to turn it off through probably the first hour and 15 minutes, but that last half hour is quite a banger. And as I mentioned to Mark in the pre-show, I had this really bizarre experience. I mean, this is the spoiler room, so we can talk freely, I assume.
Yeah, but, by all means.
This weekend, I went to go visit my younger brother, whom I hadn't seen in several years. And we had a rather contentious confrontation there were some concerns there. So I came back, hey, I'm going to sit down and watch this nice bit of escapism. And here it is right in my face.
I'm sorry.
He did not bash my face in with a rock, fortunately, but it got pretty hairy.
Well, that's good.
It was, it's got style, but I think it's like pretentious as all hell, and I can't tell if that's just him like trying to be artsy in a Western context. Now, also, I guess got to give this bit of context. I did not like his version of Old Boy, and I'm going to be the guy that says it. I liked Spike Lee's remake of Old Boy more than I liked the original.
Wow. I bet did you do that review online, and did you get some comments?
Oh, I'm sure I did. I mean, this is 10 years ago.
Oh, sure, yeah.
But no, the thing is, like, I don't mind artsiness and mystery, and what do you think it means? I'm a Terrence Malick fan, but I think it's a very fine line, and I felt like Spike Lee got to the heart of the narrative of Old Boy and did away with all this stuff that doesn't really mean anything, that you're supposed to think means something because it's quote unquote artistic. And I see that here. Like the whole thing, he does these flourishes like, oh my God, look at all these white boxes with yellow ribbons. And this object is yellow. And oh my God, look, there's a bird egg and it's going to transition into Mia Wasowski's eye. What does that mean? Nothing. Oh my God, she's laying in bed and she's surrounded in a horseshoe shape by the boxes of all the shoes she had going back to her childhood. No one does that. It's just like, I liked the end of this movie because I felt like it laid everything out and kind of cut through the BS. I just wish there had been a bit more of that in the beginning. But stylistically, as far as craft goes, like, it is a very well made film. My other, I guess, issue with it, and I know these are high level thoughts, so I'm just kind of vomiting it all out. Nicole Kidman was fine. I think she had a really great kind of final scene, like that speech that, and we'll talk about the trailer too, which gives away everything.
Yeah,
including the opening of the trailer is her delivering the kind
speech.
Of thesis point of the entire film that happens at the very end. It's the first thing you see in the trailer. It's like, now I don't need to watch the movie. But
I'm glad I watched the trailer after the movie.
Me too. I didn't know.
Why. Go
yeah,
ahead,
I knew
sorry.
nothing about this going in, and
Mhm.
I'm so glad that I avoided it. But the trailer, but Mia Wasikowska, she has this kind of a one-note thing that she's kind of doing the sullen Winona Ryder thing from Beetlejuice,
Mhm.
if that character were serious, and it's really uninteresting, except when she's coming in the shower. I'm like, why is she crying? Oh, she's never shown emotion before, and she's doing it now while she's having an orgasm. And Matthew Good, I don't like as an actor.
Hmm.
The best way I can describe him is, Mark, you're a comic collector, so you'll understand this. Maybe. When you go to the shop and it's new comic book day, and they've got them all out on the rack, you know the title you want. Say it's Dark Knights of Steel. The first cover you come to, you could tell someone's been rifling through it and it's got a bend in it or a scuff, and you're like, I'm going to finger walk my way to the back and get a perfect copy. Matthew Good is that first copy. He's like, it's the
Wow.
same thing as I'm going to get anyway, but there's a better version just a little bit further on down the line.
Wow. And
That's my
Kara.
piece. Yeah.
Hey, Kara, how do you feel about Stoker? This is going to be a very interesting conversation.
Honestly, I'm the opposite. I liked all the artsy fartsy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But of course, me being me, I liked all the symbolism. I like being able to read into things and analyze it. And even if I'm just, farting flowers into the air, I like to be able to say, well, I think it's this and I think it's that.
That's a
I love that
wonderful.
expression. I'm stealing that. Yeah.
I am sorry. We're stealing that, Kara. Farting flowers into the air. That is beautiful. That is fantastic. I usually say making a lake out of a puddle, but I like farting flowers.
You got to retire it. Kara's
I got-
giving you your new
He's
catchphrase.
giving me my new catchphrase. Well, I've got some very interesting tastes and perspectives, I guess. I really like the visuals of this movie, Park Chan-wook. As people follow this show, they know some of the films I really like, many people hate, and I like them not necessarily for the story, but for the visuals, and as Ian put it, the craft. This film is a very well-crafted film, and first time I watched it on my TV. The second time I watched it with my headphones. And the sound design in this film is actually, I liked what he did with the sound in this film quite a bit. But more importantly, I just like the visuals, even if they're just there to be artsy. I like that sort of stuff just because it's different and it breaks away from the norms, and the rest of the story breaks away from some of the norms we get, but at the same time familiar. It's kind of interesting how it is, because as Ian talked about it, yes, we have Mia, and at least they make her character 18. Okay, she
Barely.
barely 18. Okay, mind you, but at least they knew that much. This is a Western. We're gonna make her. She just turned 18, but she's 18 at least. So you're like, okay, yeah. But her India character, I really liked. I enjoyed that. It's. I always like when someone takes a genre and kind of either takes a darker look at it or just turns it on its head a bit, and it does that here a bit with the coming of age. I will say the story for a dark, say, coming of age film, Heathers, I think, did it better, without it getting incestual. But hey, some people just like to go for that shock value. What I like about the India character, though, because yes, folks, this is a spoiler room, so if you aren't ready for the spoilers, well, you're here, so too bad. But I want to talk about first the India character. You mentioned, Ian, that she was kind of the Winona Ryder from a Tim Burton film, if she was actually serious. Was there nothing that you liked about her character?
I mean, I don't even really think she was a character. She was, how was she different at the end of the film than she was at the beginning, aside from what she demonstrably manifested?
I think that might be the point.
She
Actually,
made me laugh. She says, "Well, I was trying to get your attention, officer," and then just poke.
Well, the thing. Oh, go ahead, Car.
You know what? She developed a sense of humor. It made me laugh.
My whole problem with that was, it's a problem I have with a lot of stuff in this movie. For as artsy as it was, it telegraphed absolutely everything.
Mm-hmm.
She sits down in the car and she sees the shears, and so it cuts to a wide shot of her racing down the street or the country road, and the sheriff chasing after him. Like, okay, he's gonna pull her over and she's gonna stab him in the neck.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to wait like 3 minutes for the most obvious payoff. And it was, it was also cruel because he would, I guess that it goes back to the whole like duck hunting thing with her dad or whatever, but there was nothing about that particular character. Maybe if they'd made him, vile or depraved like those leering schoolboys, but he was just a guy doing his job, right? And so I got no satisfaction. Like I said, this movie was morally reprehensible. Like, I didn't like her character at the end. I didn't think she had any moment of triumph that she deserved. I think she was just kind of a monster that, if her arc was just being brought out of her shell to actually start killing people, then, I guess that's what you might call character development in this case. But at the end of it, I felt kind of gross, and I was happy to turn it off.
Well, I mean, would you say that it's implied that something like that runs in the family? I mean,
it's very heavy-handed. I mean, the younger brother, Jonathan, the little kid, when it comes out that Charlie, who is Matthew Good's character, when he was a little boy, he was like 9, and Richard, who is the father who dies at the beginning of the movie, he was like 18 or 19. They're on their estate. Charlie has the slide leading down into the sand pit or the sandbox. He digs a giant hole. He has his brother slide down the slide, gets trapped in the hole, buries him alive, and then the older brother sees Charlie making sand angels, and you parallel that with India as a teenager making bed angels. It's like, oh, I guess it runs in the family. It's just this kind of stuff. Like, it doesn't make any goddamn sense.
Well,
Is there a psychic connection that she like, oh, I have a feeling that at some point somewhere in my bloodline, someone made, bed angels. I'm going to do this. It's artsy, but it doesn't mean anything.
Well, what do you call it? Like maybe just that subconscious, they're drawing parallels, but then you also had India running down the slide in that scene right before they killed what's-his-face.
Right. I mean, it's poetry in the sense that the filmmakers, I think, thought, wouldn't this be clever and cool? But if you look at it from a story standpoint, it doesn't make any sense. Much like the whole conceit of Charlie got sent away to that institution when he was a boy, and Richard gets him out when he's an adult, or he's, decides I don't know how the hell that worked, but he came and got him as an adult. And yet for 18 years, he's been writing letters to Richard's daughter. How does he know that she has a daughter? And also, couldn't Richard, who the family has been keeping these letters secret, that's a well-worn device, why didn't you ever show me these letters that my so-and-so has been sending me all these years? Why didn't Richard or the wife, played by Nicole Kidman, go to the institution and say, you can't let him keep writing letters to our 3-year-old daughter? And grooming her and saying, like, I can't wait to meet you when we grow up. I wish you were here in all my travels. And I can't wait to see what a fine young woman you become. Like, none of this movie makes any sense.
Well,
I'd like to comb and braid your hair.
Yeah. Right. Well, I know they don't show it, but I had assumed that at one point, he either learned from it, either from, early conversations before Richard stopped visiting him, or because there is a large difference in age between between Charles and Richard, for sure, that we know already, so he's almost like a father of sorts, but we don't know, it's kind of implied that because they mentioned that they donated the building, his family donated the building specifically for like keeping almost like keeping just keeping Uncle Charlie there, though there are other people as well.
Right, but
there.
I never got the sense that Richard went to visit Charlie. Like it felt like he put him there so he could go off and live his own life, unless I missed something.
Right. Well, he may have, but we don't know if their mom or parent or whatnot may have, or aunt. They had the aunt show up. We know there's other family members. They may have gone to visit.
Yeah, but that's a reach that goes way outside the boundaries of the story.
Well, yeah,
and
that's
it's
true,
not fair.
But for me, I like piecing stuff together, I guess. So I just assumed that he had found there. I mean, they're a high. What they call it, Richard is referred to as a higher. Like he's an architect, but he seems to be known. So who knows? It may have been even in the local paper that Richard got, or not the local paper because he was 2 states away. But who knows how he found out?
Well, but that still doesn't solve the second problem: is why were those letters allowed to keep coming to the house?
Yeah.
I mean, if someone is writing, especially a family member is writing creepy letters to my young child, you better believe I'm going to put a stop to it one way or the other. I'm certainly not keeping them. Like, why? I don't. What?
He had beautiful calligraphy.
Yes, nice little drawings down at the bottom. It was very. Those were. That whole sequence was very nicely done. Like with the writing, starting off with the writing on the screen and all that stuff. Yeah, I like that. I like the visual flourishes. That was really cool.
But the thing that makes me more curious is, okay, he goes there, he picks up Charlie, and then he's like, okay, I'm turning you loose, I'm shipping you off to New York, and he sees how stressed the guy is. It's like, obviously this guy cannot cope with just being sent away. Obviously he has this attachment that he needs to be around this family. So it's like, why doesn't it not register with him? You know what, I can't do this to you. I have to figure out something else to do with you because you're obviously falling to pieces right in front of me.
Yeah, and that it also helps me call into question whether or not he had visited him in that entire time, because you would think that he would have picked up on that during some of his visitation, unless, of course, Charlie had put on there is a wide gulf between the suave, kind of like a mysterious guy coming in out of town, I'm Brother Frank, like from Hellraiser,
Yeah.
and then the mushy, kind of like sappy, like freaking out guy that is in the car. Like, I don't know how easy that personality is to conceal, because that's the only time that we see through that facade in the film, and I was kind of curious about what that was all about, but we never get into it.
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously two sides to him, and him getting discharged, who knows, he may have turned on his charm. I'll put that in quotes, his charm or whatnot on people, because you get the one scene just before he's being released with the nurse, who's she kind of goes in for, like, you get the feeling there was something between old Charlie and the nurse who was caretaking.
This Madame Bouvier or whatever her name was.
But that personality switch in the car, it feels like it was a choice that they filmed to see what would happen. What if we played it like this? And they decided, no, that doesn't match with anything else of this character in the movie, but they forgot to take it out because it sticks out like a sore thumb. Like, what is the point of having him have this meltdown if he could have played it cool, calm, and collected and still gotten the rock and bashed his brother's head in, which I think would have been, creepier if he had that stone-faced thing the whole time.
Oh, well, I think it just shows that he needed this fantasy, and it was just not holding. Like, maybe he's not as high functioning as we're led to believe that he really is.
Right, and I understand that, and you can explore that in the movie, but it is the one instance where he is not in control. It doesn't come back in flashback. It doesn't come back, at the end of the movie when he's clearly, he's got a rifle pointed at him, and he's still, cocky enough to be like, India, come here and see what.
Yeah, he thinks she's on his side.
Right. And, a little bit of a flicker of, of him panicking, because if he's freaking out when his brother is saying, look, here's several $1,000s and a bus ticket to New York, I would assume he would be equally, even more so pissing his pants when he's got a damn rifle pointed at his head.
Well, that I think would have been more like an abandonment issue, like, oh, you're
Mhm.
turning me loose. Everybody's getting out of the car. Like, nobody wants me.
Yeah,
Which is the ultimate
yeah.
statement of nobody wants me when the person he thought he was leaving town with is pointing a gun in his head.
Hmm.
Well,
That's
true.
abandonment times 10.
Yeah.
That is true, though. She doesn't give him a whole lot of time to
Register.
register, because he's still busy,
Yeah.
and he may, go ahead.
I mean,
Well,
I interpreted that as, oh, I'm holding her mom and I'm strangling her, and India's going to finish her off for me. Is the way I interpreted that.
right. The reason he didn't panic so much is because he thinks possibly that India is going to give the finishing blow to mom, because he's got in this fantasy they're going to go off together, and India has kind of played to it, because she just wants to get out of this situation with her alcoholic mom, who blacks out all the time and is very privileged. She and the way I got it as well was, the reason he didn't quite panic too much was because he thought maybe she was going to shoot mom instead
Yeah,
of,
and I definitely, that was the
know.
way that it was being played. But again, because this movie telegraphs absolutely everything, I knew that Nicole Kidman was completely safe. But my point is, if you're going to play that, arrogance to the point of like not understanding that your own death is imminent, you need to take out that car scene. You need to have him be ultimately so full of himself that it makes sense at the end, where he was, his narcissism overrides his survival instinct. We've seen this done better in other films, I think, and having that bit of a meltdown, that crack in the character, especially if you're not going to have that bit, fine, but pepper it throughout the rest of the film, because he never breaks, like, throughout the rest of his performance. He's always that guy, except for that one moment.
Yeah, I'm agreeing with that. Like, it's kind of, what do you say, like a plot hole.
Yeah. An abandoned, or a dangling plot.
It's more of a dangling plot thread, because I get the feeling that, because this is a very breezy hour 38 minutes. Maybe there was something that was cut out or whatever, but it feels kind of incomplete.
Well, in the trailer, which we'll talk about a little later, in the trailer, there's a line or two in the trailer that wasn't in the movie. So there is obviously stuff that's on the cutting room floor, that I think maybe alludes to it, and maybe they cut it because producers get in the way, and they say, no, we got to cut this down. They might not like it. Given the subject matter, I'm surprised this got released what it did, because I mean, the idea that there's a crazy uncle who's been trying to groom the daughter who's been taking care of drunk mom, and who was really close to dad. The daughter has her own problems. I mean, this film is dark, and there's a lot of,
and they never talk about the relationship between mom and dad. All they really tell us is about how close the daughter and the father were. But, like, did mom actually even love dad? They never tell us anything about that.
Well,
they get into a little bit. It's because Nicole Kidman, I keep calling her Nicole Kidman. I got to find out her
Evelyn.
character's name. Evelyn. Okay. They do early on, I think it was around the time of the funeral. Evelyn says that, she loved Richard, and that Charlie reminded her of Richard when they were younger and they were closer. You get the feeling they were married for quite a long time. But yeah, Richard had a much better relationship with the daughter, and the mom was kind of not that it didn't feel like she was shut out. It felt like she just let them have their own space and let their relationship flourish in a way that hers and Richard kind of had gotten stale up until the point. But she was really torn up. Like in the opening kind of montage, we hear Evelyn, get the news on the phone, and she starts screaming, "Richard!" Yeah.
I don't know. It's just because the thing that really stuck with me is mom seems to have really moved past it more easily than India. Like, or maybe it's just she's trying to adjust more, make things seem better adjusted. Like, let's go get some ice cream. Let's go have a girls' day. And I don't know. Maybe she's in denial. I'm kind of trying to figure that one out.
Well, Oh, go ahead. I was just gonna say, with the way Nicole Kidman plays it, and you're right. Even though she inspired our Nicole Kidman in 4D, she's not in it that long, but she makes the most of every scene that she's in. And
Mhm.
the way she plays this, and it's not necessarily in the dialogue, but it's just in the way she physically acts in this film. You get the idea that one, yes, I suspect, or I got the impression that she subconsciously became not, for lack of a better term, intimidated, or not so much jealous, maybe jealous of when India grew older. She had interests of dad, and dad took interest in his daughter, not realizing later on we get the line of why he's actually was trying to stay close to India. But I
Mhm.
think I always got the impression, the way Nick Kidman plays this, is that one, she felt jealous of India in a way because she had more of Richard's attention than she could get, thinking that it was her age, because she, like, there is that one line of, she thinks of Charlie but a younger version of Richard.
Mhm.
Mhm.
So enter, pardon my French, but cougar mode of sorts, to where she's lost her husband, she's in a vulnerable state. Here's someone who looks like her husband when she first fell in love with him, so
Mhm.
who doesn't, as far as she knows right away, have an attachment to India. So again, she's seen almost like a second chance of sorts, or try to
Mm.
do a redo, just like with a redo with India. Oh, let's get ice cream or whatnot, something that feels just like something they never really did before, you know. And
Yeah.
little does mom know that old India is just a budding psychopath. So
Yeah, I mean, I think you're a lot right there, Mark. I mean, Carter, what you were saying earlier, that India seemed to be having a harder time getting over her dad than Evelyn. I think that's partially because they had that stronger bond.
mhm.
But yeah, I think, and this the frust. I like the movie you're describing, Mark, more than I like the actual movie we got because. Well, no, I mean, because seriously, I think there's something really there, and it kind of goes back to the Hellraiser thing,
Mhm.
with the younger brother coming in and kind of like sweeping the grieving wife off her feet, even though Julia in that movie was not grieving because her husband died. It's because the relationship was dead.
Right.
At one point, he said, to Kirsty, don't mourn your father. He was dead long before we got to him. It's that
Mhm.
whole thing of like sweeping in to fill that loneliness gap there. I mean,
Mhm.
you could have restructured this movie. I mean, you could have had a really interesting family psychodrama minus the serial killing, genes or whatever they're trying to do. You don't even have to kill Richard off. You could just have, hey, here's our world traveling uncle. He's coming into town and sweeping mom off her feet while dad and daughter are off, like kind of having their bonding. And it's not because they don't love each other. There's real infidelity on her part or Richard's part. It's just because they've grown apart. And what does that do when you've got this
Mhm.
X factor introduced? But in this movie, that's manifested as a half a dozen or maybe even a dozen shots of people in corners beginning to make out or grabbing each other's belts or whatever. I'm like, yeah, it's
Mhm.
quote unquote sensual, but I don't, where's the character?
Mhm. Well, that makes me curious. So is the issue you find with this, the like, do you find that the pacing's too slow is why you don't care for it too much?
No, Mark will tell you, I love a good slow movie.
He
Um,
he loves a slow movie.
You
but
like a
that
movie
reminds me.
with a slow hand?
Oh yes, and she definitely had a slow hand in that shower.
Uh,
But no, no,
Mm.
but and Mark, a sidebar. We talked
Mhm.
about Knight of Cups last year or the year before.
Yeah, well, yeah, yeah.
I watched a movie recently called Three Worlds, which is also art house, but it's the more accessible version of Knight of Cups, which I really recommend.
Okay.
But no, it's not the pacing of the movie. It's just that I kept I've seen less artsy versions of this movie and this story before.
Mhm.
The sensualize and like, oh, we shouldn't be doing this, and oh, somebody's watching, and like, okay, what is this adding up to? And the
Mhm.
answer is not much, except Uncle turns out to be a killer. That's why the last half hour of this thing, when they finally reveal that it's not just, some, tired, weird family infidelity thriller, and it's got some real teeth to it. That's when I really kind of woke up.
Well, what'd you think of that? There's the piano scene, which is the awakening.
Yeah.
I knew Ian was gonna have that reaction. Let's get Cars first. What'd you think of the piano scene? It is literally almost at the halfway mark, which again led me to believe that maybe producers got into the editing booth and said, "Yeah, we got to cut some stuff out," because at the exact halfway point is the point when India is, I don't know, is awoken. The woman part of India is kind of awoken with this piano duet with Uncle Charlie. Cara, what'd you think of this scene?
Well, I think it's interesting, especially since they've already discussed she doesn't like being touched, but they're sitting so closely and they already have like this connection via music without actually, touching each other, being sexual. And I don't recall if at some point she's sitting on his lap, but for some reason
No.
I want to say I remember it that way. Like
No, they're just next to each other. She never actually. Yeah.
It seems like she practically is, though. But
Right.
When he reaches his arm around, yeah, and they're like up against each other quite fervently.
Yeah. But I mean, I thought it was well done. I mean, yeah, I mean, it's very. I guess you could say it's tense, it's sexual. I mean, it's done tastefully, it's classy, but it's fairly steamy windows.
And Ian, you put your hand in your up to your face for this scene.
I gotta give them credit for making it actual incest instead of like, oh, she's our adopted daughter. And Uncle Charlie isn't really blood. But I'm watching this and like, okay, so Charlie's like 35 or something, and they do the thing. We're like, oh, but she's 18. That makes it all great. I'm like, okay, yeah, but like 3 days earlier she was 17.
Yeah,
and none of this is okay.
She looks more like she's 25.
Well, she was 23, so.
Oh, okay, close.
She was close.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why it doesn't bother me.
Well, I mean, it's just the whole idea that it is actually, your family. It's just like that. It's strange and weird. And I was waiting for someone to pump the brakes, and no, they just stepped on the gas and then they flipped the NOS switch in terms of where this thing goes.
Yeah, but it was still family. No. Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, technically there was no touching.
What? No, he had his arm around her.
Okay, but he didn't grab anything.
He didn't, but they were like rubbing up against each other. I mean, you mentioned that she was practically in his lap, and she was. I mean, he was as close as he could possibly be, and she did, from what I was watching, achieve at least a light orgasm. And then she turns around and he's gone. So I don't know if it's supposed to like, oh, it was all a vision or a fantasy. I don't think so.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's just something. I can't quite put my finger on it, but yeah, it's like it's skeevy, and the problem is, I guess to the point, it's someone's supposed to find this erotic because it's filmed in the way of like a Basic Instinct thing, where like, oh, people are kind of getting it on, and she's having a sexual awakening. I'm like, yeah, but that's her uncle.
I mean, it's weird because it's kind of played off, at least for me, it's played off in two different ways. Like, yeah, it's sexual, but then it's also weirdly innocent at the same time.
That's not good.
I don't know. Maybe it's, I mean, it kind of, to me, it looks like they're trying to present it both ways at the same time.
Well, the one thing with that scene too, and why it's, it's why I wanted to cover it too, is because kind of the pivot point for her, as far as, what she's discovered. They almost play it off like it was her imagination. Like she was playing and she was imagining him coming up and doing this, but they throw a few dirt specks on the seat to maybe imply that he was there, though it's a big room. He didn't split that quietly, that quickly, baby. I mean, I know he's a snake, but So it very well could have been just in her mind thinking that's what he was going to do, you know, kind of implying it. But the way it's shot, it almost feels like it's real. And I think that's the point of it. But again, and I get where you're coming from, Ian. There's other movies too, to where if you've got that concept and it really bugs you, which it should, and don't get me wrong,
Yeah.
but if that's something that really keeps, you know, there, I could definitely see how that would just everything else gets even more amplified with your experience in watching it, just because you're like, yeah, I don't like this. I mean, I'm like that with your most wonderful comedy, Freddie Got Fingered. For me, I can't get past Tom Green's comedy as much as I try. I try to find the humor or what. Oh, great. Oh, great. Oh, no.
No, well, you mentioned that, and I love the scene where they throw the skateboard at the broken knee.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And then he's licking it, too. We've lost Mark. Mark, come back. It's your show.
Another one. Oh, my Lord. Okay. I'm sorry, brother, but what I'm saying is that, no, I totally get it with, you know, certain films and that if there's things being presented that just bug you, it can definitely...
You know, here's the thing. I don't even necessarily have a problem with the concept of incest and exploring that in a movie. It's just that when it's kind of like, and I'm going to tread very delicately here, but concerns about depictions of rape in movies, and is showing that in a way that could be considered erotic or to turn an audience on when you're trying to depict something that is absolutely, you know, filthy and horrifying and disgusting. I kind of feel that way in, you know, not that I watch a lot of incest movies or anything like that, but when it comes up, I'm like, what is the filmmaker trying to achieve here? Am I supposed to be rooting for either of these characters as far as like, oh, I'm having a sexual awakening? I'm like, yes, again, but it's your uncle.
So are you saying like potentially it's open to interpretation? Like maybe the piano playing was innocent and she fantasized all of that, or did it actually happen and it was like, whoa, that actually was intense. Did I see this? Like, did I actually see this thing?
I did see it. But the thing is like I don't know if it's a fantasy or not, because he did kind of Batman his way out of there. Although there was sort of evidence on the seat, maybe it was kind of like dirty, but I don't know. Maybe the set dresser just forgot to dust off the seat. It was a very weird choice.
They might have,
It looked like someone was sitting in like those like wood chips out in a playground, and then they had some on their pants, and then they played the piano.
Because I never gave it thought, but it just kind of, and now it just makes me curious if they purposely left it open to interpretation.
Maybe.
I think they did. That way, if people threw a fit about the scene, they could say, well, it was just in her mind. It didn't actually happen. That was just her fantasy, you know, whether or not that was their intention or not. And I think it's supposed to be left kind of open like that to make you wonder, because, you know, we get obviously the one shower scene later on after they kill the boy together. You know, the way I looked at this film was more of just, and you're right, Ian, a lot of it's telegraphed. I didn't mind the telegraph stuff. I'm like, okay, especially with the runtime. When you look at the runtime, you're like, yeah, they're gonna just cut right to the chase of sorts. But this is almost like just an origin story for a serial killer. It's what it is. You know, like I want to see the next movie with India going to New York and doing these things, you know, because she was a fascinating character. One of the scenes I really enjoyed was where she confronts the bullies. I have to admit, I really dug that scene on her own once she got because she had gotten the confidence after the fantasy scene of the piano. You know, and she's smart, and I guess that's my appeal to her character too. Is in most aspects, she's very intelligent person. You know, I mean, at least she got her wits about her, because she sees that her uncle's out front, and she even before she saw the notes, she's like, yeah, that dude's creepy, and you know, everything outside of her subconscious is telling her, yeah, avoid him. So she goes the other way and runs into the creepy boys. But as she sees them, she immediately pulls out that pencil. I just love that scene. I know how it's gonna go, but I love that scene.
Mhm.
I did like the aftermath of that when she's putting it through the pencil sharpener and the bits of flesh are coming out.
Yeah.
That was nice. Now, Ed, you mentioned the sound design, Mark. It drove me crazy
Yeah.
because, like everything else in there, everything was kind of cranked up, so it's very loud.
Mm-hmm.
Like when she's rolling the hard-boiled egg on the table, it's like, and then they do that horror movie trope that never makes any sense. You don't actually see it, but you hear it and it's implied based on what he's doing. But there's a bit where Charlie's in the kitchen preparing something, and he pulls the knife out of the butcher block, and they do shh. It doesn't make that sound unless you're scraping it against another knife
Wait,
next to a microphone.
your knives don't do that? The shing.
I wish they did. But no, like all of the sound effects in this movie were cranked up to the point where, like, okay, if I'm just walking around in regular life, I wouldn't be able to hear half of those things, like, at all. But they had to pay the sound guy, I guess.
Well, now you can watch the movie and now you know what those sound like. See, so it helps you.
Yeah, but when she's doing the thing with the pencil sharpener, the visual was undercut by the audio because I'm like, wow, that's really. I'm like, just let me enjoy it, please. Just give me a moment.
What about you, Cara? The bully scene? Did you?
I liked that. I remember the first time watching it, even this time, because I had forgotten. I wasn't expecting that pencil. I was like, whoa.
What I thought was interesting about that too was that happened, and I guess it's a little bit of variation from what we see normally. Is his buddies go rushing to him rather than like someone grabbing her or something and holding her there, because she did something violent to their buddy. They all went to their buddy, and then he wanted at India, and then Wade, I think his name is, shows up
Whip.
or Whip, who we realized was just playing India as well later on, is the impression I always get. He just was always playing her as just being the one that breaks through the odd girl. He comes up and goes, yo, man, it's over with. She's and I want to see her. Yeah, go at her again. Go ahead. You're gonna get a pencil to the throat. That's what you're gonna get.
It was a really well choreographed scene because that guy, I think it was Lucas Till.
Yeah.
He reaches out to strike her and she blocks with the pencil. And you almost it doesn't quite register until the hand comes back, or you see the pencil like pull back with that little black bloody stump. Yeah, that was well done. I will say the presentation of the high school boys was cartoonish even by like high school boys suck measures, because all right, yeah, you've got the one kid who sucks, then he's got this whole group of, like, all of them have blonde hair, including the black guy. My God. And then you've got Whip, who turns out to be the nice guy who's also the budding rapist. But going back to that, the first time you see the high school scene is like in an art class where the kids are like, it's not even like they're whispering stuff to her. They're openly like mocking her and shoving like nude pictures in her face and saying stuff that the teacher hears, and then the bell rings and then everyone just leaves. There's no like, I need to see you boys after class, or hey, are you okay? It's just like, this is sexual harassment technical high school.
Yeah, there is that though. One of the things I do like the way they play that though is how she is unaffected by him. At any point, she, at least doesn't show any. He puts the nude drawing of her drawing someone in front of her, and she just pauses for a moment, and then she starts drawing in it, and he's just like, wait, what the hell? Not getting the reaction he's hoping for. And then the bully part I kind of like, because they did not get the reaction they were looking for from her. And it wasn't like she was putting up a front and then she silently went into the bathroom and like cried or whatnot. No, because as I said, at its core, this story is about the origin story of a serial killer who will go on later and be tracked down by a detective played probably by Woody Harrelson. And they're, and I thought that was an interesting approach, but they at least keep her kind of psychopathic tendencies throughout, to where you know there's something more dark in her. Even without the heavy-handedness of the dad taking her out hunting to make sure she kills birds instead of kills people.
Pre-Dexter Morgan.
Well, I understand like what they do with her character, and I think that's all very, well done here. My point is contrast, because when you've got 3 scenes involving high school boys or a high school teacher, and they all turn out to be monsters, that doesn't smack to me of a filmmaker trying to, portray high school life. It smacks of a filmmaker with a beef against like high school boys or men in general. Like, yes, they're all like secretly or not so secretly monsters. And like, you already have a movie about people who are kind of maybe secretly monsters. So just like one bit of contrast out of those 3 encounters, have at least one person be not a piece of shit. It's like watching a movie with like, like all the blondes in it are whores.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? The one on the left was just a tease.
Yeah.
Well, you know what they say about I don't know. I don't know what they say about teases. But
there's other lines you could never mind. Anyway, we won't go down that road. Regular price $4. Anyway, if you know the joke, he knows the joke. I made him laugh. Oh, you okay?
You're on a streak with this Nicole Kidman month, man. I don't think I've had this much like show-stopping laughter reactions.
But man, the only thing that I could possibly explain it away with what they were maybe trying to do it, not well necessarily. And again, I like this movie, but I fully recognize its works at all. Not trying to portray it, but we never leave India. We're always seeing the world from her perspective. I don't think at any one point we leave her. We're always by her side, or we're seeing the world through her eyes. So maybe we're seeing how the boys are. They're doing bad stuff, but as far as, like you said, the teacher interjecting or whatnot, maybe we're not seeing it just because she's ignoring it or whatnot. So we're seeing everything just through her perspective.
That's not quite true. Although I can't remember the context, because we do get that whole jag of what happened to Richard and him going to pick up Charlie.
Okay,
at the
there's
insane asylum.
Background,
but where I just watched this movie today, but I can't remember, why did we see that scene? Was it just the film cutting to that, or was someone talking about it, or remembering something? Where did that whole montage come from?
Which scene? You mean with getting
the secret
Richard?
Origin of him going to get Charlie, and then they go in the car, and
what that spawned from is her, because she at the beginning she received the yellow box, but instead of shoes for once, she received a key, and the key was actually from the maid, not from her dad. Because she's like, oh, I thought Dad was giving me these shoes the whole time, which he was. This time, the maid gave her the key because she's 18, and therefore she wanted her to find Dad's secret stash, the gun, and then the photos. And then you have the photos of the kids, and you have one kid there that she's never heard of now, and she's like, well, who's the lost brother? And then she kind of puts things together from there. And then when we see that sparks the flashback, not necessarily for her, but who these people are.
Because I'm wondering, now that you mention it, Mark, and I'd have to probably go watch the movie again, but are those flashbacks even things that she's putting together from looking at that material, or is it the movie taking a time out to say, here's what really happened?
It's hard to say. I think the film's just taking a time out to tell what really happened.
I want to say that Charlie was confessing to her what he did to her father, at least in that scene where he's kind of having his meltdown before he kills him with the rock.
Oh, this is right, because she's there. I missed something, because she's taking the letters upstairs, and that's when she picks one up that she dropped, and she sees the stamp of the institution on it.
Right.
And then he comes to visit. He comes into the house, and they have that whole conversation on the stairs.
And that starts the montage. Yeah. So he's confessing to her. Yeah.
Right. So it's not all from her perspective, but it's mostly from her perspective.
It is. Right.
Yeah. That's the one thing that's the one sticking point. I'm like, we got someone else's point of view, but you're right. So it's like 95% her like POV.
So I mean, while it's not conveyed, it may be just the fact that it's being told, since it's being told from her perspective, some of these things are either exaggerated or that's how she's seeing them.
Sure.
While it's not necessarily clear. So the boys are all assholes because we're seeing it through her eyes. I've seen a couple other like horror films, indie films that are female led, and nothing wrong with it, but like the way the characters are portrayed are almost exaggerated, but then you realize you're seeing the entire world from the main character's perspective. You never get like, well, this may be what a scene without her there, so therefore that could be why also all the high school boys are assholes, is because we're being told from her her angle. So that's the way I kind of always took it. Either that or it is just stereotypical high school boys to that degree. We've seen that before too. But this ending, I really love where it at least it ends up. Again, this director, one thing he does do is tends to finish his films strong, even if you don't care too much about the rest. His films really end, far more. You're like, okay, here we go. But I like the way this resolved. Kara, how'd you feel about the ending with this?
I mean, I like and especially the fact that it was a wraparound. But I like her description. Like, I'm wearing the shoes my uncle gave me, and then you look at the heels, and at the beginning it gives confusion. Like, your uncle.
Yeah. It already gives you that impression. Like, wait a minute, your uncle gave you heels? What? And the belt of her dad and the dress of her mother. So there's that symbolism that's hitting you over the head that Ian mentioned.
But even just the way it's written, I'm like, it's prose. I'm kind of like, oh well, I like the way it's thought out. Like, you're supposed to actually really think about it and actually, like, hey, you're supposed to be paying attention to this. Remember this for later.
Mm-hmm. And it does make for an interesting credit sequence where they actually do a freeze frame with the titles, which I thought at first was something wrong with the feed because I was watching this on VOD and I'm like, wait, did it freeze? And like, oh no, that's actually doing it because credit sequences are rare in the front of the movie.
I was thinking the same thing. I'm like, man, this thing is freezing. I'm
glad I'm not the only one. But Ian, you said at least you said the ending was kind of strong, so you did enjoy at least when things picked up a bit.
No, well, I didn't like the end of the movie, but that's only because it's weird, because like in a movie where there's basically only two positive portrayals of men, and they're the ones that you spend the least amount of time with. There's Richard, the father, who you only see in flashback or when he's getting, or when he's getting murdered. And then there's the sheriff, who is just doing his job. Like, hey, you called because you were in a panic. I'm here to see if everything's okay. By the way, did your mate ever come back? Boy, a lot of people seem to be disappearing around here lately. But he's not, I almost, and I know this is going to sound weirdly hypocritical given what I just, talked about with the high school kids, but if he had given her like a leering look or made some kind of an advance or put her, yelled at her for wasting his time for coming out for some nonsense call, that could have at least given me some indication of like, okay, this guy quote unquote deserves to die. But he's not. Like, he pulls her over for speeding and he's like, you're certainly in a hurry, is everything okay? And she just knifes him in the neck, and I'm like, he's just an innocent small town sheriff doing his job. And this whole, like, again, artsy, beautiful, like arterial spray splashing against the flowers, if that had been her stalking Charlie through those weeds and those flowers, I think that would have been a beautiful poetic ending. But it's just this innocent guy. I'm like, again, what am I supposed to be taking from this?
Just that her coldness, I guess, is what you're taking. The only motivation I could see for her killing him is that when he is talking to her, he doesn't believe, even though he says, okay, you get the impression the sheriff thinks something's not on the up and up with this group, but he's not quite letting on with them, but enough to where she's intelligent enough where she's picking up going, yeah, he is a possible, loophole in here. So she kills him because the impression I got, because she doesn't bother cleaning up the blood after she drags old uncle's body down to the grave and buries him next to his other victims. You fully get the impression that she may either want to frame mom or something for it, or just give the impression enough to where she goes away. But she can't do that if you get the sheriff who is like, yeah, well, I was out there and the uncle was acting kind of weird around her. But if she kills him, then she's got more of a chance to fade into the mass bodies of New York, fake ID and all that, which you figure, yeah, she could probably get away with.
See, I like again, you're describing a movie that I would have rather watched, because how's this for an alternate ending? She doesn't go speeding out of town. She just drives out of town. She happens to pass the sheriff's car as he's just going somewhere. She leaves town. Sometime later, the sheriff gets an anonymous phone call. Hey, go to the Stoker residence and look under those giant rocks in the front yard. And who's the number one suspect there? It's mom.
Yeah.
Because she's the grieving widow. Maybe she had jealousy issues or something. You could plant a story, and then she goes down, and then you've got India going off to live in New York in a gender-swapped version of American Psycho that I would totally watch.
It'd be better than the original American Psycho 2.
That's yeah, okay. The American Psycho 2, okay, yes, with Mila Kunis. Oh my god.
I don't even remember the story other than I didn't like it.
Yeah. I barely remember that.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
No comment.
That's a showstopper. American Psycho 2.
It's a showstopper. American Psycho 2 just shut this whole conversation down. Well,
I was going to say the boulders in the yard. I was thinking that all of them were. I was thinking the whole thing was a graveyard, that somebody was under all of them.
There was.
I think so, because they had the maid, Aunt Jenny, eventually Charlie.
Wait, yeah, or Charlie.
Whip was probably under there too. Alden Ehrenreich.
Yeah, Whip the maid and Aunt Jenny were all under the rocks, and then that's why she put him next to them, so that when it's found, it's like, oh, there's everybody, because she did about that blood trail there. Evelyn's not going to clean that up. She's just going to try to leave the building as well, probably, if she knows how to drive anymore. And I'm not saying that to be mean. I'm just saying because of the way her character was, being privileged and whatnot. Who knows? Maybe she didn't really drive herself. But now's the part, folks, where we're gonna play the trailer trash or trailer truth, to where my guests have watched the trailer, and we all watched the same trailer, and so we're gonna get their judgment to see if the trailer for this is trailer trash or if it tells the truth. So, Kara, you go first. Is it trailer trash or is it trailer truth?
It's a lie. I win. Good night.
I concede.
So I don't know what to do with that now. So did it reveal the truth of what the film actually is, or did it try to give something different?
I watched it thinking that it painted the mom as the bad guy, and that that she was psychotic and she was the one behind the death of the father. And then I was thinking, oh, you know what? The daughter's psychotic too.
Right. So yeah, there there's definitely no loss that there's something wrong with the daughter in the trailer. They kind of they don't really hide that too much, I think, in it. Ian, what about you? Trailer truth or trailer trash?
Well, I like what Kara said there, because thinking about it now, that's absolutely true. But I didn't pick up on it when I watched the trailer, about how Nicole Kidman's character is sort of painted as a villain of the piece, primarily because, as we mentioned earlier, they open up with that wonderful speech she gives at the end of the movie. But they give away absolutely everything in this trailer. And again, I don't know if it's because it's a difficult movie to sell, so you gotta do what you can to get asses in seats. But I was very disappointed. It is. I think we did this the first time we talked about trailer truth or trailer trash. It is both truthful and it's trash.
Yeah, I agree. It's a mixture of both. And part of the reason why I like doing this segment is just looking at how they promote films versus what they really are. And this one, again, given the subject, they pretty much lay out the whole thing for you. Now, the trailer that we saw may have been very well put on a VHS, but that's no further excuse. Well, this would have been 2013, so a DVD. But that's not really an excuse to show the whole movie, and they do pretty much show the whole movie and at least let you know that India's got something wrong with her. I mean, that's given away even in the trailer.
I mean, they show Ginny in the phone booth. They show the maid in the freezer, which I'm sorry, that was a direct lift from Psycho 2 with the lady in the wall. But yeah, and like Alden Ehrenreich on the ground, like crying. I think right before he got the belt around the neck. I'm like, you don't have to show all of this.
There's that many kills in the movie. You don't necessarily need to show all of them. They pretty much do in the trailer. So there you have it. It's kind of a mixed bag, folks. It is trailer truth and trash. So now, yes, it is. What we have here, folks, today is a Perfect 10 episode. Therefore, let me pull it up here. We will be doing the Wheel of Random once again. So let's pull up the Wheel of Random here. And here we are. So we're going to spin the wheel and see what movie we're going to cover next month. Round and round and round she goes. Where she steps, nobody knows except the algorithm. And there it is, folks.
Woo!
And this will be the first revisit of the Spoiler Room. Kind of fitting considering we're celebrating 10 years of the Spoiler Room. Very early on in the Spoiler Room episodes, we covered Under the Skin. So we're going to revisit this. For me, these fine folks here and whoever else we could get it, mostly the OG crew is on that. We'll see who we could get on or not. And we'll visit Under the Skin, the very interesting indie film that has was ScarJo in it. It's one that is going to be a fun conversation. If you all of these films so far have been really, you folks, you listeners, you voted on them. Okay, we had a big long list last year and you voted on them, so we're covering a lot of interesting movies that I didn't think we'd ever get a chance to talk about. So that at least is very, very cool. We'll just stop the screen. There we go. So Under the Skin.
Is there any chance, I mean, you probably have that episode in archive, right? So
I
can you figure out who was on that show and try and get them back to see how you feel about it 10 years on?
If they're still talking to me, absolutely. I was thinking of that. So we'll see what happens with that. But next month, Under the Skin, which given that movie could make for another interesting themed month. So I'm trying to figure maybe it'll just be a whole month of revisits. I don't know. We'll come up with something. But there you have it. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. And now, license to shill to my fine guests here. Kara, the floor is yours. Have anything at all you'd like to shill?
I don't have anything current. I don't have anything current going on. Let's see. I know earlier today I shared an older video that I had done for this same movie from 10 years ago. But that's on my Twitter if anybody wants to look that up, which is retro_horrors on
Awesome.
twitter.com. But yeah, same. I'm just going back to doing just live streams on horror retrospectives, same as my screen name, and that's pretty much what I'm doing right now.
Cool. Yeah, live streams are the thing. So, and speaking of live streaming, Mr. Ian Simmons is the master at them. He doesn't stumble like myself here, and I'm sure you've got plenty to plug, Mr. Simmons. Go ahead.
Well, I'm Ian Simmons. I run Kicking the Seat, which you can find at kickseat.com. I'm also on YouTube. If you go to youtube.com and look up Kicking the Seat, I'm there. And yeah, like Mark said, do live streams and movie reviews and interviews and roundtables and all that stuff. This Thursday, we're going to be talking about the season 3 finale of The Mandalorian. We don't have a backup show. I'm giving everyone the week off of the second show. But yeah, so come join us, hang out, like, subscribe, all that good business, and it's a lot of fun. And Mark is a very frequent, very patient and forgiving guest, and I love having him on.
I think your guests are the patient and forgiving ones. I just sneak in the back door, and you just
I've read that about you.
Accept me, yeah. Oh, you got to buy me dinner first. Anyway, no, speaking
it's all salad. What?
It's all salad. I thank you for our 2 live viewers we've had tonight. So glad. I hope you've enjoyed the discussion, and all my listeners out there. And yes, we've been doing this for 10 years. So I didn't do it last week because I had trivia coming up. Last week, Tuesday, was officially the 10-year mark for the Spoiler Room when we did episode 0 on reboots and requels and sequels and such. But tomorrow, 8 p.m. Central Standard Time, here on the YouTube channel, as well as our Twitch, which we broadcast to, and our Facebook group, I will be doing a live AMA/episode, and I have no idea who's all going to show up. We may get some OG, we may get some new folks, but and don't know how long it's going to go. But one of the topics of conversation, outside of answering any of your questions for our live viewers who catch us tomorrow night, we're going to be talking our favorite film series. So out of all the movies that we watch, there are IPs and series of those IPs, and we're going to be talking about our favorite ones, suggested by Spoiler Room regular Tanya Atomic. And so we went along with that subject. And so 10 years anniversary AMA tomorrow live, Ask Me Anything, and we'll be talking our favorite series. So look forward to that, folks. Like and subscribe and all that here. Like our subscribe, our Spotify channel, or wherever you get your podcasts from, and also specialmarkproductions.com. And until next time, we're going to say good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night.